always to return to me. Yeah, I know it's true. It's all because of you. And if you go away, I know you'll never stay. Now and then I miss you, yeah. Oh, now and then I want you to be there for me. All right. I know it's true. It's all because of you. And if I make it through, it's all because of you.
Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. And was feeling a little bit of a kind of a lower plane of energy this morning, just kind of dragging along after seeing some last night, and my spirits just got taken into a much higher realm thanks to my guest, guy who has incredible time feel, great rhythmic singer, and has really continued to inspire people. On the bandstand, washing away the dust of everyday life for those people that come in after a long day of work, and still able to swing in his own way. Tony O'Malley, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, thank you very much, Jay, and thank you for allowing me to sing. It's
so freaking great, man.
Well,
I mean, it just, you know what it is? You know what I realized? I don't know if you can, you can riff on it any way you want, but the thing is, like, I mean, how did you learn to, this is going to sound interesting, but, I remember talking to a great jazz guitar player who's left us. His name was Jack Wilkins. He was a New York cat. And, he said, he goes, guys like McLaughlin and Al Di Meola, he's like, they have impeccable time, but the beat falls in the weirdest places. He's like, I've transcribed some of their stuff, and they have great time, but the beat falls in a weird place. And when I listen to you sing, you've learned to dance in your own body. You've learned your own time feel. And I just kind of wanted, because I could just have you sing for an hour like that, and that would be just fantastic. But not everybody makes it feel that. How have you learned over time to create your own time feel and dance in your own body?
Just by doing it, Jake. You go out and I've played for two tramps and a dog, at gigs, but you just got to do it. And I think I've learned. I was never really a very good singer, I don't think, because I worked with some great singers, and I've always felt, in awe of these fabulous singers. But I just think by doing it, I think I've got better with time. And, I think I'm in my prime now, actually, at my age,
I know. I mean, you're not the. I mean, there's people that. I mean, for what it's worth, I mean, they, and it's fascinating because you listen back to their playing or their singing from an earlier time,
yeah,
and they're playing great, but they think that they're more on top of their game now than ever before, and they're in their
yeah,
70s and 80s, and
yeah,
I mean, and how did you learn? Where did you feel like you learned to feel the beat? That's maybe the better question. Who is a cat that you played with who had impeccable time, but the beat fell in the weirdest place?
well, most of the musicians that I've worked with over, recent years, they're all great players. And I think you find that great players live and breathe the rhythm. It's just like, for instance, if the young guys that I'm working with now, they're born to be musicians, and like for instance, Pino Palladino. When you must surely know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, Pino, I work with Pino. What happens when Pino plays, for instance, that everyone ups their game. It's not that he does anything fantastic. It's just they know he's a great player, and I think that's what happens when you're playing with great players. You just have to kind of learn from them for a start. That's how I've learned, is from just working with great musicians. And I often say, really, when I work with the band, I don't really have to do much. I just have to groove along. Excuse me.
No,
Yeah,
I mean, but there is a fine line. I mean, going back to Buckmaster, and
yeah.
the early work. I mean, there was, I don't know, man. I mean, a lot of younger cats. I mean, they're fantastic, and there's a lot of telepathy, but there's something about the flow of your early career and the time period that you were in, and the lack of the click track and the Lynn drum machine, and just
Yeah.
this idea that you had to have your own. I mean, that's the magic of jazz. Let's be honest. Everybody in a band like Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers, I mean, everybody had to have their own inner time feel, and they all kept their own time. They weren't relying specifically on the drummer to keep time. And that's just something that your generation had intrinsically. I wonder where you feel the beat the most. Do you feel it sort of, I mean, you feel like it's a little bit in front, a little bit on top, or behind the beat? Where do you feel like you fall
Uh,
anyway?
I try not to think about it, because if you think about it too much, you can get, go down a difficult road. But it's just to do with feel. And I think I was maybe born with a feel. I wasn't born with great technique, but I know that I've got feel. And that's what you find most great players have just got a feel for it, and you just have to feel it. And I can't describe that. I don't think that's kind of impossible to describe. It's something you can't. You kind of just have to live it, I think, and breathe it, and
Absolutely.
and so I think there's a famous football manager. I don't know if you follow soccer or anything, but the Liverpool manager. He said, "Football is not the question of life and death." He said it's more important, you know. So
No, I mean, but let me read you this quote, because I know you're not a drummer, but a piano is a percussive instrument, and I think it might put it a little
mm,
bit more in perspective, and actually be fascinating to hear it from your point of view,
mm,
being a being from a different continent. This is from a guy who was took over for Al Jackson at Stax Records, named Willie Hall.
yeah, yeah,
That the drummers on the East Coast, and he's a drummer, so the drummers on the East Coast, United States, playing on top of the beat. The guys in LA play a little in front of the beat. The guys in the South, we all play behind the beat. I go to
Yeah,
a
yeah,
recording session in New York, and the producer would say, "Hey, man, you're playing behind the beat. Can you get on top of the beat?" I said, "Sure, man, I can." My playing behind the beat laid back was due to playing in the South. In LA, they wanted it a little more frisky. There were times when they
yeah,
would have to use machines to put drummers on top of the beat. So why don't you? I mean, I recognize that in your when you're in the moment and you're in the flow, you're not thinking about that stuff. But
yeah.
traditionally, were there parts of the continent, you're where like cats maybe would come and they just have that intrinsic behind the beat, or have people
Yeah,
come up with you and said, "Hey, man, I really like your feel. You're really on top of the beat." You can riff on that any way you want.
yeah. Steve Gadd, I think, is probably
Yeah,
maybe
well,
Bernard Purdy. You know, those guys. Well, what can you say,
but
really?
it was
I
also, I mean,
don't
what Willie was really saying was it's a regional thing. I mean, the laid back southern Greece of Memphis, intrinsically, they were playing behind the beat. And I
right.
just, I wonder in your case, were there different regions that like Ireland versus where, a cat would come and you'd be like, wow, that's a different feel, or, that kind of thing as it relates to just the beat itself.
I don't know if it's a regional thing in England.
Right.
You just need, I think it's a drummer's thing as well. And a rhythm guitarist. I know Neil Hubbard, who was in Kokomo, always used to play with the snare behind slightly. It's just it like kicks up, if you know what I mean. It's sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
slightly behind, but I don't know. It if it, as the old saying, if it feels good, it is good. Basically, that's the way I look at it, and I don't really know the technicalities. Drummers will get into that kind of thing. There was a time when I played down a club in London, the 606 Club, and it'd be all drummers there in the audience. They'd all get together and talk snare heads and sticks and
Wait, they were just
cymbals.
watching Tony O'Malley cook the groove solo piano, or I mean, this is unbelievable.
Well, well, with the band, and some of them used to get up and and play with me and take over from the drummer who was playing with me on the night, and yeah, so that happened a lot at the 606 Club because drummers would come down to six. I don't know, because you know what, drummers they get sponsored. That you always find a drummer that
Hmm.
most of them they get sponsored by companies. Whereas
Sure.
piano players,
To
you got to
use to
be
use their gear, yeah, totally.
you got to be a top player, piano player to get sponsored. Like very well known. And I've never really hustled for it. Although Yamaha did once help me out, but I got fed up trying to hustle, for sponsorship. So in the end, you just buy your own instrument and. But drummers tend to get sponsored, and the good ones, the good players. You have to be a really good player, and yeah. But I don't know what it's like for most piano players in the States, but I think we have to buy our own equipment.
Well, I was going to ask you actually, like, it's funny because we're talking about, the higher echelon. But when I interviewed, Ahmad Jamal, he was talking about Leo Fender and the getting his first Fender Rhodes. Herbie got it. They were trying it out that early
Mm.
'70s. What was your remembrance of a transition time for you, probably around the Kokomo era, of going from? I mean, do you remember getting your first Rhodes? Like the idea of basically
Yeah.
going from acoustic, more importantly, going from acoustic to electric instrumentation. I don't know if you ever played with a string bass player, but I mean, I know you probably started your career and played a lot and continue to do on the acoustic upright piano. But
Uh,
then,
well, I started off. I had an organ. I had a
wow,
Hammond L122, which was kind of
Wow.
the cheapest one, because the electric pianos in England at the time weren't up to much. You could get a Farfisa organ, which, well, you know,
Yeah.
I
What is that
didn't
good?
like,
Yeah.
and or a Vox, you know, the one with white keys and white black keys, and they weren't very inspiring. And then I had an RMI piano, and it wasn't until I think '71 I got a Rhodes, and you know that was a dream. I had a Rhodes and a clavinet, and I had, you know, what a lot of players have now have gone back to is playing the Rhodes and the clavinet on top. I had that for years, and I had first had a '73, which you know, you had this. Well, this is not a Rhodes, but you had that
Oh,
kind of,
there you go.
you
That's
know,
it. That's it, man.
you know, or and then you had the whirly, which was
Oh, come on, dude. Are you? I mean, just keep stretching out, man. Yep.
Donny Hathaway in.
That's a Donny Hathaway tune, right?
Yeah,
In the ghetto.
talking about the ghetto,
Ghetto.
the ghetto, talking about the ghetto, because he played this on the whirly. Because you need a band really to play it.
Oh my God, that is so great. Yeah, that live Donny album. That's totally that sound.
Oh yeah, actually, we were walking the dog earlier on, and we heard the cafe was playing the ghetto. You know, it was very unusual in France to hear Donny Hathaway in this neck of the woods, and they were
That
playing the
is so
ghetto.
great. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, Donny Hathaway, you know, oh, well, what can you say about that man? He was fantastic. That album, that live album, was a huge inspiration to me in the '70s. You know, the early, well, when it came out, I never stopped playing it. You know, it was,
Yeah, that was. I mean, it was trans. I mean, you were, you know, more in that bag anyway. It was
yeah,
soul singing, and I mean, Phil Upchurch was on that
yeah,
album,
yeah.
and it was really funky, but it wasn't like they were. I mean, they weren't playing, you know, Blue Note 12-minute jazz tunes. You know, it was really more of a
It was
uh,
it was a groove.
translatable.
Yeah, yeah. But Donny Hathaway was also a fantastic singer, and he came from the church. He used to sing in the church, and it was such a sad day when he passed away. You know, and you must have heard Layla Hathaway.
Yeah, well, I mean that was something that kind of popped into my head a little bit because I was actually, I don't know if you crossed paths with him before, but I did this incredible interview yesterday with Chester Thompson,
Uh-huh.
who was Phil Collins's drummer in Genesis for a while. Before that,
Yeah.
Weather Report, and before that, O'Donnell leaving. And there were two Chester Thompsons. The other one was from Tower of Power. But you know, I mean, I don't, whether it was Larry Coryell or McLaughlin or Santana, a lot of these, I mean, there was so much drugs going on, hard drugs,
Yeah.
especially early '70s, that they saw their friends becoming roadkill on the side of the road, and they wanted to live, and so they, um, you know, sought a higher level, basically trying to reach a higher state of consciousness without drugs, and they did that through guys like Sri Chinmoy. Obviously, the Beatles. Without the Beatles, I'm not sure we would have ever known about Maharishi.
Mhm.
You know, there was Maharaji in India with Ram Dass, and you know, I just wonder with you, not that you were some raging addict, but just because it was everywhere,
Yeah.
um, and you know, it was just part. I mean, I don't care if you were a lawyer, doctor, everybody was doing coke and you know whatever, it
Yeah.
was crazy, and I just like, to me, was there a moment in your life where you feel like you saved yourself from
Yeah.
yourself? Was it, did you have any kind of what would be considered a
Yeah, I got heavily involved in all that stuff with Kokomo, and then afterwards, you know, I was really, I was an addict basically, and I, I feel lucky that I came out of that terrible spiral, and just worked my way back up really, and but yeah, so I could talk about it. But
Yeah, no, I mean, Steve Gadd, you brought him up earlier. When I interviewed him back in 2015, I asked him about overcoming adversity, and he didn't shy away. I said, "Can you give an example of overcoming adversity and how it made you a stronger person?" And I mean, we're talking about the
yeah,
number one studio drummer in New York in the late 70s, and he was totally strung out and he was totally out. And
yeah,
um, basically, he had to leave. He had to leave New York. He lost the drum chair in the studio. He lost his
yeah,
family, couldn't see his kids, and he went
mm,
away. And he could have lost everything. I mean, he had to go away and clean up. And then, you know, he had
yeah,
guys in the business when he came back that were friends of his and helped him get back. But I mean, can you talk about basically hitting
yeah.
rock bottom and ultimately how, if you feel like you were saved in some way?
I can talk about that. It was quite similar, I guess, what you've just mentioned. But did you hear of the band 10cc? Do you
Well,
know?
I've just been reading about it. I don't know the music, and I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah, they. I'm not sure they were so big in the States, but they were very big in England. And I joined 10cc in 1977, actually. And there at the time, I wasn't really strung out because I'd just been in the Middle East with Martha Reeves and the Vandellas.
What?
Yeah, I did a tour, and you know, I was clean actually when I joined 10cc. Uh, but I had been, pretty strung out on everything really. You name it, I took it. And but when I joined 10cc, I was relatively well. I was clean, but then somehow, you meet an old friend and you start doing it again. I was in a band, and there was a successful band, and we went to Australia, and somehow or other in Australia they knew that I was, I thought, it was a secret, but everybody knew about it. And so, as soon as we kind of hit Sydney, someone said, "Yeah, hey Tony, believe you could use a little assistance." And so, it just rolled on, and
I
actually,
want to be clear though for the audience. This is going back to pre-Kokomo. I mean, I know
no,
you got clean, and then we're on the road with Martha. But you had been previously
yeah.
doing heavy drugs prior to that.
Yeah, yeah, I wasn't such a big junkie, in Kokomo, but I was taking. There was loads of drugs around at the
Yeah,
time,
it was just everywhere.
and everywhere, yeah. And we did it, and but I didn't become that strung out then. It was only late. It was later. I
Hmm.
was, into it, and everybody, not everybody in the band, but a few members of the band were into it. And when I joined 10cc, it just happened to be available especially in Australia, until I got busted. I got busted in Australia,
Wow.
uh, but fortunately, they didn't find the hard stuff. They only found some hash and some hash oil and some grass that was on my table that I hadn't even touched. I
Wow.
wasn't really that interested. But they didn't find fortunately, they didn't find the hard stuff. And that was it. I got busted, but it was a let off. Anyway, it's a whole story. It would take forever to tell that story. But basically, in the end, I because of that bust, and because I wasn't really, I wanted to do different music to 10cc, and we split, and from then on, I really did go downhill for, I think, quite some time, for about 5 years or six, or even maybe. I didn't get clean really until '86, and then I gave up drinking in '88, and I gave up, and that was a revelation, giving up completely giving up drinking alcohol in 1988, and I'd given up all kinds of drugs. So I was a clean boy, but it was like starting over again. I'd done all the hard stuff. Really, I was at rock bottom. But
Yeah.
fortunately, a lot of guys didn't make it. And I feel blessed that I made it. And in '92, I gave up smoking cigarettes, and then in '95, I met my she was to become my future wife, and that saved me as well. When I met Femke, and then we had in '99 we had two boys, and they're now 24. So for since 1995, life has been good. It's been very good to
Let me,
me.
let me ask you, you got busted, but you didn't do any real hard time because wasn't hard drugs, is that right?
Yeah, well, they busted me they had to because they couldn't ignore it. The grass and the hash oil that was on the table. I said, yeah, it's a fair cop. That's mine. So I appeared in court the next day, an Australian court, and we were in Adelaide, and we were due to fly to Perth in the morning. Now I was appearing in court, and the judge said to me, Mr. O'Malley, you want some representation? I said, well, I've got a plane to catch at 11:30. And they said, well, we'll see about that. And meaning, I just basically told the truth. I didn't mention the hard stuff because they didn't find that. But what happened was he said, O'Malley, Mr. O'Malley, I'm sentencing you to 54 days or $500. And I said, well, I'll take the money, Your Honor.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so it got
And
somehow.
you got on the plane.
Yeah, I got on the plane.
So
Yeah.
So you dodged a bullet there, but then you kind of went even deeper into the pit though for the next
Yeah.
and then what was I guess at the end of the day, I'd love you to talk to cats who are I have a few beers at night or maybe a glass of whiskey. I don't really have the ability to drink like full bottles of wine or,
hmm
and I recognize that some of it's hereditary. And then, I just look at marijuana and stuff like that. I don't, even mushrooms and psychedelics, I don't think that those are really things that
Yeah.
are hard. But, especially going into 88, after you stopped drinking,
Yeah.
and you said it was basically like starting over again, basically
Yeah.
as it related to the music, you're talking about reaching a place of transcendence and peace and bliss without any uh, accoutrements, about any is that right? I mean, that's kind of
Yeah.
the idea of
Well,
finding the magic. I want you to talk about that. That to me is the struggle because, you can look back on it and say that puts you on a trajectory that you're still here today with kids
yeah.
and wife and everything. But early on, I know in 88, when you stopped drinking, I know that you probably were like, how the fuck am I going to get back to
Yeah.
reaching that level that I lived as a rock star?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I started from the back to the bottom, really, playing small places. Still, I always kept playing. I don't think I ever stopped playing. And also, I continued playing with really, really good musicians, or I'd play in a cafe or a piano bar and stuff like that, just to build up material and
Sure.
carried on writing songs because in those days it wasn't so easy, to not like today you can make an album at home. And I did try that. We had, all the stuff that was out at the time, like four-track Tascam and, trying to make records and laying down a drum beat with coins in my pocket and, slapping, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Out there. I haven't got any coins in my pocket, but yeah, that sort of stuff. But I just carried on. But it was you know, I was strung out. It's difficult to know where to start to try to explain it because I don't really think about it too much these days because it's all behind me and the future is or right now is
Yeah, the
what
moment,
matters.
exact. Yeah, yeah. But did you, I
That's
mean,
what,
was there a moment, you never stopped playing music, but I just
no.
feel like when you make that commitment to, um, I don't know what, so if it's sobriety or clarity, I mean, it, it must be, how long did it take you to recognize that you could get to that same state without anything?
Well, I kind of knew anyway that I didn't need drugs to feel the music. But
Right,
what was
right.
difficult was to have the belief in myself that I could actually sing and I could play. But you have to get out there and do it, and that's what I try to tell everybody. It's no, you can't do it at home. You have to get out there, at least play for people, and because that's what I enjoy most is playing for people, and trying to give some kind of joy, to people who want to listen to music. My music, of course. That's my favorite. That's my favorite pastime, is playing my stuff. And it's I find it difficult to talk to in terms of what does it mean and is it spiritual? I don't know. I love spiritual music. I love, for instance, I love at that particular time I was playing Aretha's Amazing Grace. It
Wow.
was
Yeah.
it, I played that one to death, and of course when the film came out recently or just a few years ago, I went to see it several times, and I've got it now on, I can watch it anytime. But because that's the kind of music that gets to me, the gospel music, and especially the Reverend James Cleveland and his uh,
Orchestra. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
yeah, the
Gospel. Yeah.
California, yeah, the gospel choir, and especially that at that time, what Aretha was doing in the church, it was amazing. Uh, anyway, so that to me is what the kind of music that moved me, and the kind of music that I wanted to try to get across. But it's music's it's a very grey area, if you know what I mean. There's so many different types of music. You can talk about it till the cows come home, but at the end of the day, it's all about playing it and feeling it. Feeling the spirit, man.
Well,
it's what it's.
absolutely. I mean, getting the spirit to move through the room too. It doesn't matter how it
Yeah,
starts.
yeah, yeah.
Where, I mean, I do want to go. Did you? I mean, in the looking back on it, can you uh, say that you became? I hate the word famous or a star, but with 10cc, uh, that band kind of broke out. It was already very well. It was well received, but they started to have a lot of commercial success when you were in the band.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, they'd already had commercial success before I joined. There was originally four guys, and two of them split, and two went one way and two went the other way, and kept the band going. And I knew Graham Gordman from way back. He befriended me actually I think it was in Manchester,
Wow.
where he comes from, and we were friends. And when the band split, he called me and said, do you would you like to join 10cc? And I said, well, I'll have to think about it. I'll do it. And so, yeah. They'd already had success. Then they actually, and even when I left them, they had even more success. So I think I might have been a jinx. But when I
Well, wait a
left,
minute though. You joined in 77, is that right?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, like it seems that there was I'm reading here that uh you recorded some albums and you got your the first international number one single when you were in the band.
Not when I was in the band. No, that was
Dreadlock Holiday. No?
yeah. I'd already left the band then,
So
so
you were not with them. You were only with them for a brief period.
1 year. I was with them for a year, and we went to Australia and Japan and Europe. We did a lot of road work. There was one album that was made. It was a double album, and it was
Live
live.
and let live. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And, but it was great. I thought the guys in the band were great, and it was we played some really fantastic gigs. But it was I'd been in Kokomo previously, and that was Kokomo was just full of kind of shit up musicians, and not that 10cc weren't great musicians, they're great players, but it was a different type of music. The music that Kokomo was playing was deep. It was deep
Oh
soul.
my God. So
You
deep,
know,
man.
it was yeah. You can't, as I say, it's so difficult to explain because people try to play that kind of music, but it comes from somewhere deep. And all the players in Kokomo were really, of that mindset, and it just kind of clicked, and but it was a big band, and there was too many drugs about, and not enough support from the management, and yeah. Anyway, in the end, it fizzled out. Although we still play, we're playing in September in London, a couple of gigs in London.
What original members are still? Because I got to get to everybody that is still in the band. That is, I mean, to me, it's a miracle that I even found the album. I don't know how many
Yeah,
pressings of this album there were, but it's like, I guess maybe my point is how, not that you were like uh obsessing about this, but the reality is you already had uh the Average White Band,
yeah.
the Oblivion Express. I'm going to leave out other bands. What do you think was seminal? How did you differentiate? Because I mean, there was a lot of blue-eyed soul going on, and I just wonder, as it relates to you, was it just the amount of vocalists? Was it additional percussion, the lyrics itself? What made you not uh, the Average White Band?
Because I think it was the musicianship and the
Mm-hmm.
singers, particularly Frank Collins, who was the driving force of the three singers, because he did most of the writing. Actually, his
Wow.
songs are great. I'll play you one in a minute, actually, and
Please.
and Diane and Paddy, they just blended so well together, and the arrangements that they came up with, inspired, I have to say, by Aretha and all those great gospel and Motown.
Yeah, Donny Hathaway, Marvin
Yeah,
Gaye, all those guys. Yeah,
absolutely, and Joni Mitchell as well.
incredible. Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
All the great, Marvin, all that kind of great stuff that we don't seem to have around these days, although I'm sure there is a lot. But anyway, so I think if you're trying to analyze Kokomo, first of all, there was Jim Mullen, and Jim he's fantastic.
I have to ask you a question. Are you still in touch with him?
Yeah, we played together recently.
I'm obsessed with that dude. Is one of the baddest dudes ever,
Well,
ever.
you should interview him.
I need to talk to Mullen, dude, because honestly, that was the reason. Because when I turned the back of the album over, I'm like, all right, these are funky people. And
Yeah,
the
yeah,
only cat that I really recognized was Mullen. I knew
yeah,
him, and I'm like, okay. And then I throw the album on, and it's just like, I don't know if
yeah.
I asked you this in the first. Were there did you get radio play on some of those tunes? I mean, some of them seem like they definitely flew below the radar, but I'm curious. There
We
was one
did.
Bobby Womack tune that gets all the pub, but I mean, from the original
Yeah.
stuff, did you again that the way you arranged that Bobby Womack tune was insane. But
Mm,
was
yeah.
Did you get some good radio play off those tunes, or did it sort of like a lot of bands like sort of just get lost in translation, even though you still were able
Yeah,
to tour live?
we didn't get what we should have got. In fact, in we made two albums. Jim left the band. Actually, he left the band because he wanted to do. He went to form a band called Morrissey Mullen, which actually they were quite. They did some great albums, and then we made a third album where there was a song that got some great radio play on black stations, actually.
Whoa.
But yeah, and CBS.
What was the name of the tune?
No point in finding fault. Love you can't have no more if you do.
It's all right.
A little bit further away. There's no point in fighting. I didn't sing it. Love you can't have no more. If you do, you got a high price to pay. Listen, baby. And it goes on. I haven't played that for ages, so I don't really. I never used to sing it, actually. It was sung by Frank. It was a great song. It got a lot of plays, but I think the story goes, Sony Music, which was Columbia at the time, they were excited because they said, it's going to be a big hit, man. It was getting all the radio play on the black stations. But once they find out that we weren't black, the radio plays stopped and it fizzled out completely.
I'm sorry, was it on Rise and Shine?
No, that was the second album. There was the third album that was made in '81, produced by Brad Shapiro.
Right.
And it was that. Oh no! That was, sorry. I'm getting.
There was Leo Graham and James Mack.
Yeah, sorry, James Mack. Brad Shapiro. He did the.
So the early '80s the self-titled Kokomo, or I don't know if it was You had two self-titled albums, or what was the name of that album in '82? I'm just looking here.
I think it was just Kokomo, Rise and Shine was the second. That's what Brad Shapiro produced.
Right, no, but I'm saying the first one that was produced by Chris Thomas was also called Kokomo. Yeah. So you had two self-titled albums.
Yeah.
So in that early '80s, I'm sorry, were there not pictures of the band on the album? I mean, it was pretty obvious you were White Cats.
I don't think there was any pictures, were there, on that album?
No, I've never seen that album.
Oh, I don't think there were any pictures of the album.
Wow.
It's just it was a picture of a black statue or something. It was all strange album. I didn't particularly like the album myself, and I was going through a bad time.
Yeah, that was your really heaviest down spiral there.
Yeah. So I wasn't in a good space myself. But I think that particular song was really great, written again by Frank, who is still a great writer. And in fact, I'm going to sing a song that we wrote because...
Go ahead.
This one's called If I Could Only. If I could only turn back the clock, if I knew you'd been lonely, baby, I would have been your rock. If I could travel to Venus from Mars, I would make heaven a place in your heart. If I could gather all the stars in the skies, I'd wrap them in rainbows to shine in your eyes. I've been selfish, darling. Well, I guess I'm just a man who took you for granted. Oh, and treated you bad. Well, there's no excuses, but with hand on my heart, there's one guy who chooses to make the new start. If I could only turn back the clock, if I knew you'd been lonely, baby, I would have been your rock. If I could travel to Venus from Mars, I would make heaven a place in your heart. Yeah.
Wow. That is just, I mean, I could just hang with Tony O'Malley all night. 4
Oh
sets.
man, well, let's go for it. Yeah.
No, I wanted to a couple things. I wanted you to talk, not that it's just in between the last time we talked and now we lost a guy that I interviewed. It was kind of a contentious interview because he didn't seem like he really wanted to think a lot, but I did get some good stuff out of him, and he was a kind of a seminal. He was a seminal cat, and I just wanted you to talk a little bit about, in your mind, the significance of John Mayall on music.
John Mayall.
He passed away. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah, I know. I saw him when I was about 14.
Holy, I mean, because I mean, we did this interview about 9 years ago, and he was just baffled and bewildered by all these questions, the questions that I'm asking him, the scope. And I said, hey, man, I said, you think that I'm just going to ask you about Eric Clapton and all the rehash stuff all the time? Of course, we're going to go deeper into this stuff. And, it was a little back and forth, but I guess I sort of, in sort of reading about his career and getting a little bit deeper into it.
Yeah.
What do you think was why was he a significant player in that blues scene?
I don't know. I didn't know John Mayall. I knew who he was, of course, because I went to see him back then.
Wow.
And that was when Eric Clapton was with him. And I remember Eric being at the back, sitting down on the floor. That's my memory of it. I don't really remember the music. I think why he was such a popular guy, was because he was a blues aficionado. He knew everything about blues players, and he was this is my take on John Mayall. And I didn't ever think he was not somebody that I followed to get inspiration from, because I just didn't really. I admired him, and I thought, yeah, he's a guy that's sticking up for the blues, if you know what I mean. He's he's I don't know how to describe it. But,
no, I was going to say the other thing, not that you followed it, but the one thing that was always fascinating to me about him, especially when he came to the States, was that he was his albums were very subtly, but also very creatively jazz blues fusion albums, because he was taking on guys like Blue Mitchell, who played in Ray Charles's band, but Blue was also like most incredible jazz trumpet player you're going to ever listen to, or Ernie Watts, or
Yeah.
Freddie Robinson on guitar. So, and I asked him, and he's like, well, I could hire somebody in England that sounded like Blue Mitchell, but when I'm in the States, I could actually get Blue Mitchell. So a lot of those albums were sort of a mishmash of that stuff. I just wasn't sure if he. I think I think you nailed it. I think he was an aficionado, and I guess probably a good entertainer as well.
Yeah, I never saw him after that. When I was 14, he was playing locally, and I don't, I can't remember the gig really. I just have a kind of vague memory of it. But yeah, I don't really know what to say about John Mayall
That's
except
fine. You don't need to say anything. That's fine. Were you telling me that Clapton was in the audience, sitting in the back,
no, he was playing with him.
but he was
He
like sitting Indian style or something? He was like doing just.
uh, sort of. This is only my recollection. Maybe my brain's
No,
playing
I
trick
think you're
with
all
me,
right.
but he was at the back of the stage, sort of leaning against the wall at the back, sitting down. That's my recollection
Wow.
of it. And I thought, wow, is this the blues? And yeah, I can't remember what John Mayall was playing. He's probably playing an organ at the time, but that's all I remember about it, really.
The other thing
But
that I had to, I would love you to tell the story of how the heck Bob Dylan got hip to Kokomo.
Well, he didn't really. I don't think he got hip to Kokomo. It was he just signed up to um, Columbia, and
Right.
we just happened to be in the audio in the New York at the time when he just started making the album Desire. In fact, do you know Rob Stoner?
I know the name. Tell me about him.
Well, I don't know him. I just follow him on Facebook, and I can tell you. Let me find him because this is quite interesting.
He was
He
a bass
told a
player or
story.
something. I mean, yeah. What was his deal?
Guitar player,
Guitar. Yeah.
guitar player, and producer. I don't know if I can find it now, but uh, we just happened to be in the country, and Columbia thought it'd be a great idea if we were invited onto the first day of the session, and now we were hanging in this other room, it's like a hospitality room, and we got called in at some stage, and the room was full of musicians, and Eric Clapton was there as well,
Wow.
and the violin player, what's her name?
Yeah. No, I know.
Yeah, and everyone, everyone.
Scarlett Rivera, right?
No, I was thinking of the other one. She was there, yeah,
Yeah.
but it was just full of musicians, and we were
Wow.
playing this song, and it was quite easy kind of chords, but it seemed to be like a bar of one, or a bar of five, if you like. And I couldn't, everyone was just kind of playing through it and not really asking any questions. So I said to Bob, but can you just come bring your guitar and bring it over to the piano? And he was more than willing to do that.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
he played it, and we were sort of working out. Now I got it now. It's great. So and we kind of let's say momentarily hit it off, but at the end of the day, it was too much. There's too many players. In fact, Rob Stoner has recently written about it, where he said there was a load of musicians in the studio, and the producer didn't really know what he was doing. He was a stock. He worked for Columbia, and he wasn't really a record producer. So Rob Stoner and a couple of the other musicians, they got together with Bob, and they say, "Look, we should do it this way," and they became the band. And just a four-piece, I think, five-piece, maybe with violin and stuff. If I can't remember the actual article, but I just read it a few days ago, and said, well, that kind of really summed it up. That we would just happen to be on Columbia Records, and we happened to be in New York, and Bob Dylan happened to be starting his album on that day, and we were all called in, to help. But it wasn't. It was nice to meet Bob Dylan, of course, and but
You're telling me though that once Stoner and the other guys in the band sort of took over from the other producer,
well,
did they have you come back and do and
no,
cut vocal
no,
tracks, or that was just a
no, no.
one-off thing?
No. I remember Frank and Paddy and Diane, the singers, the Kokomo singers. They were doing some singing on one of the songs, and Frank tells the story. He said, "Hey," Bob Dylan said to them, he said, "Hey, less of the wobbly stuff," meaning less vibrato. Hey, less of the. I don't know. That's what Frank tells the
No,
story.
this is one of my favorite tunes, "Romance in Durango." That's the
Oh,
that's the one that they were singing on.
oh, is
And then,
it? Oh,
and then there's
okay.
another. It says that appeared on the album. I know that song and that's a great album. But
Yeah.
"Romance in Durango," and then another one appeared on the Bootleg series compilation, which I haven't gotten. That's called "Catfish." So
Yeah.
a couple of tunes with the Kokomo singers wound up
Ah,
on
yeah.
that
I didn't
Dylan.
know. I didn't know that, to be
Yes,
honest,
we
because
got "Romance in Durango" and we got "Catfish," which is just so tripped out. And Dylan was just interesting because I've talked to guys who were working with him on New Morning albums that were earlier, and he actually needed somebody in the studio to sort of direct traffic because he did not
yeah,
talk. He was somebody
no.
who really just got the groove. He'd start playing the song, and the rest of the musicians would step up and do it. So the fact that you
Well,
asked him to come, yeah.
that's where Rob Stoner came in, and the official producer still took the credit for producing the album, but it really was well, according to Rob Stoner anyway, that it was him and another guy. I wish I could find it. I probably send it to you actually if I find it. It's on Facebook, and oh yeah, blah 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 blah. Oh no, that's not right. Anyway, it's that's his story. My story is just basically we were there for a few hours on the first day of the recording, and at the end of the session, the producer, the guy that got the credit for producing it, came down to the studio from the control room and said, "Hey, Bobby's lost his voice. That's it for tonight, fellas." That was
Was
that was
the producer Don DeVito or something? Yeah,
yes, that's him. Yeah, Don
yeah,
DeVito.
yeah.
Yeah.
Don, and this is incredible because I'm looking at this album. First of all, one of my great. I think he passed away, but the drummer was this guy that goes back to like the Brecker brothers. Howard
Oh,
Wyatt. Howard Wyeth played drums,
oh yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then Vinnie Bell was on the album, and also and Clapton plays guitar on "Romance in Durango," which is the vocal
Mm.
track that Kokomo's on, which is amazing.
Yeah. So is Rob Stoner credited on that?
Absolutely, no stoner bass guitar background vocals.
Yeah. There you go.
Nothing related to production. That like you said, although there
Yeah,
was a cat who was a conductor, Luther Ricks, who
right.
but this is and Emmylou Harris was on the album. Scarlett
Emmylou
Rivera.
Harris.
Yeah,
That's who I was trying to
yeah,
think
yeah,
of.
right.
Yeah,
Emmylou
yeah,
Harris was on. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it was a nice experience, but we were only there for a few hours,
that's still
and
tripped. I mean, were you there? That was your first tour of the States, or were you there to cut the album?
no, we were touring with the Average White Band.
Unbelievable.
We were supporting the Average Whites, and they were huge at the time.
Did you by chance go to were you playing like college universities and stuff?
Uh, what the gigs? You mean?
Yeah.
No, they were arenas we did with the Average Whites.
They were they were huge at that point. I mean,
Yeah,
I
there were
mean, yeah.
15,000, 20,000. Big gigs, and they were great. I used to watch Ferroni every night practically. He
Oh
was
my God, dude. I love that. I just freaking every time I hear that man's name, I'm just like,
yeah,
because dude,
Stephen
I got
Murphy.
to see him. Oh my, I got to see him at a coffee shop couple times in Pasadena playing bebop brushes. I mean,
Yeah.
and this, it's unbelievable how versatile that guy was.
He played at my 70th birthday party.
No, I saw, dude. I chimed in on that Instagram post. That was like that made my day. After we talked, I looked
Yeah.
you up on
Oh yeah.
Instagram. There, you
Yeah.
and Ferroni are hanging out, having a ball.
Yeah. I didn't arrange that. He just
I
happened to
just
be in the
love that.
country.
So you guys crossed over, and you would open for them. You wouldn't
Yeah.
close. Yeah.
We were opening for the Average Whites on 2 tours actually. I think we did in 75 and 6,
So
75
you
and
were
7.
playing like, I mean, you're saying you were playing Madison Square Garden or Nassau Coliseum, like in Long Island or Boston. You'd play like big
Yeah,
arenas.
big venues, but we did a lot in the South. I found it amazing that there was, a white Scottish soul band, and the audience were 95% black, and because they were, that just proves, you don't have to be black to groove. It was just,
Dude, I love that. This is the greatest story. I mean, we've just been riffing for 2 sets now, and that's the greatest poetry. You don't have to be black to play the blues, or to be
yeah.
soulful, to be soulful. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But they were great. The Average Rights, and still Hamish Stewart left the band, and he went with Paul McCartney for Wings for quite a while. But he now is back in England, and he's got a great band in England. Hamish, he's the one.
Are you tight with him too, or you talk to him?
I don't play with Hamish, but particularly because he's got, we're both kind of band leaders. So
Right. No, I mean, like you guys are friends though. I mean,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're friends. I mean, we're not bosom buddies, but we're friends, and
absolutely. That's just so. And I mean, obviously, I have to believe also, like
Hamish is great. He's still singing great, and his band he's always has great musicians, and
oh my
it's
God.
always a pleasure to. And he has a horn section. You should hear this. For pick up the pieces, go da 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 da.
Oh my God. Da, 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 yeah.
Yeah, but there is there is another section that Arif Madin wrote for a horn section. I think it was for some special event. It might have been for that festival in Switzerland. He wrote it for like there was the Brecker Brothers and
It was like Montreux Jazz Fest or something.
yeah, the Montreux. I think it was for the Montreux, and anyway, it's a fantastic part. It just goes off, it goes into this amazing, and Hamish now does that on his gig, so he does that arrangement, and it's a knockout. It's just a horn section going off. You have to hear it to appreciate it, of course. But
all I want to do is go on Kokomo tour with Average White Band. I mean, my life would be set at that. I'd be in front of O'Malley's rig every freaking night.
We supported them just in May, on May the 2nd at the Albert Hall, where the Average White Band was only two
I feel
originals.
so honored. This is so, you are like, I mean, that's what I don't know. I don't want to get too romantic about it, but that's about as good as it gets, man.
Uh-huh.
I mean, being in that same tier, and yet I just would have loved, because I've listened to those Average White Band albums, and they are like on the razor's edge, and yet your stuff was similar but definitely different, and yet that you guys stood. I mean, the fact that you're still collaborating, still sharing bills.
Oh yeah. Well, this was just the Average White Band were doing I think they're probably their final tour, and they asked us to support them at the Albert Hall, which is a fantastic venue, and we didn't do that. Though we were told you got 45 minutes, Tony. Don't play a moment over, by the tour manager. It's like the death sentence if you.
Yeah,
if
right.
You,
They will kill you.
Minute over. But that was fun. We did a great show, and the audience loved it. But what for me the highlight was when because we watched the Average Whites, and they were, they're just great. They have a great singer with them now, and at the end they invited Jim Mullen up to play the encore.
Oh my God!
And I'm not kidding. Jim did a solo that was out of this world. You know, everyone was talking about it afterwards. It was really unbelievable. And
Jeez, was it captured
yeah,
on video? I gotta see this. I mean, that
I
dude.
don't,
ah,
I don't know if it was. I'm
it
sure it
just
was.
it was a mind blowing situation. Yeah,
It was a mind-blowing solo. He
yeah.
just took it. He took it somewhere, you know, to a higher level, and it was. I couldn't believe it was. It was like heaven, you know. The way I know the way he can play, you know, because we've been playing together for a long time, you know, on and off, and it was magnificent, and
So I
yeah.
want to be clear. I want to just before we wrap up, I just on that 70 on that album, the first album, uh, is Mullen primarily soloing and Hubbard is primarily playing rhythm guitar, or are they trading solos?
They Neil does take solos as well. They work very well together. They
I
stay out
did.
of each other's way.
Oh, I love
And
it.
the players, in fact, Adam Phillips, he played with us actually as well. He was helping Neil. Neil's not been very well, and all these guitar players, they stay out of each other's way. They work together, and it's great to see, you know, and
And
to
it's called,
listen.
you know what it's called? It's called respect.
Sorry.
To me, what you're describing is ultimate respect for the music. Nothing's above the music.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what it's. And Jim is like that. Jim loves singers. You know, he loves to work with singers. His wife is a singer, and he'd be great. He's got
No, no,
some
I mean,
great
dude,
skills.
I mean, dude, listen, Tony, let's let this breathe for a minute, but we got to do set three, sometime in the
Okay.
fall. But I will send you a few cats that I would love to connect with because there was
Yeah.
something about our first interview. It opened up a new portal of spirit for me, and I am forever grateful for you, man. And I really dig, and I just love the fact that you're still doing it. And frankly, I feel like, well, what you said at the beginning, you're at the top of your game now. So I just send you as many blessings as possible. Just keep going, man. It's been so good.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I mean, it is, thank you for inviting me onto your show.
I mean,
It's
dude, I mean, it was like this was. I mean, this sort of is an ebb and flow thing with the Jake Feinberg show. After 13 years, there's just so much, and sometimes you just get tired or exhausted, and then all of a sudden you're looking at an
yeah.
album and you're like, maybe I can trade this in, and you're like, wait a minute, and you're like, no, 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 and then next thing you know, you look up Tony O'Malley, there you are, and the next thing you know, it's just a journey to bliss. So, hey, man. Thank you
Call
so much.
call anytime, Jake. You know.
All right, man. Yo, stay in touch. All right, and many blessings
Yeah.
to you, man.
Stay in touch and all the best, Jake. Have a good day.
Cheers. You too, man. Sleep well.
Big love. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.